Hey man, how are you?
Good. I'm just moving. I change my display name.
Are you on a phone right now?
I'm on my computer. I'm just upstairs. I'm gonna move in the house. Grab all this stuff. Thought I missed our meeting because I got up with work stuff, and then I was looking at that Q Park stuff, and then I was like, wait a
Yeah.
second, isn't the meeting in the middle of the day? And I saw it still on.
Well, no one else joined except for me, so um we'll
Have
see
you
how it
looked at the
goes.
Q Park stuff? Because I figured maybe.
Yeah, I was actually watching the video right now, about 20 minutes in at 2x speed. It's interesting that I don't even so they've just been talking so far. I haven't seen anything, I haven't gotten into enough of the actually, does he actually show how it works? It looks like he's
I haven't
talking
looked.
about theory still. I haven't seen it all though. Oh no, there's some. Yeah, so I haven't gotten to that, to the useful parts yet. But it looks interesting. Um yeah, and also as far as like inviting people, we're always, open to inviting people. If you identified him, it might be good if you want to go ahead and reach out. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know anything about them, but I don't
Yeah.
know anything about any of it. I just literally saw it.
That was a good catch. I don't think anyone's ran across this yet. Uh,
Should we watch it together? Or
how much have you seen of it?
I only watched the 6-minute excerpt where Brett, who I don't even really know who that is. I feel like I've seen the name before though.
Brett Weinstein?
Yeah, issues that debate challenge.
Yeah, which looks like it never happened.
Hasn't
Because
happened.
this was back in July of 22. So it's been 6
Oh,
months.
oh wow. Okay, I missed the time.
And he hasn't done much with it. It's still, behind the sign in link. I haven't tried. I don't think there's even is there yeah, there's interest in registering for an alpha, send an email.
Okay. Let's see, is there any? Okay, so the other link is to the um longer. No,
Yeah.
it's a different video. This is not
But
the
that's the
same.
one, yeah, that's the one I'm watching, the longer one.
Okay. Oh, but it's got at least like mock-ups to kind of explain.
Yeah.
Okay, so this looks, I'm seeing yes, no, should things be adopted? This sounds a lot maybe like what was it Joel who kind of was interested in, like, should we do this? Should we do that? Oh, this looks like identical
Yeah.
to the same as Joel's.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
What are this
Yeah, I don't know.
person?
I have to look at it. There's so many different options to see. I mean, they were already talking about like there is at least a hierarchy, so it is an argument map
Mhm.
at some point. But yeah, I haven't seen enough to really comment on it.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's definitely worth watching. Let me just search. Of course, we can't even search our whole history because we are in the free Slack.
Mhm.
Let's just see if Q Park shows up anywhere. Nope.
I don't think I've seen anyone mention it before.
Of course, it's not even showing up for your post. So,
I think it only goes back 3 months, so things disappear quickly.
yeah. Yeah, so I think he'd definitely be worth reaching out to. I'll be interested to watch the rest of the video. How's everything going with you? Anything up in the debate space, or are you just handling family and life?
I am almost done with this sort of the, I don't know, not minimum viable product, but sort of like the least I could accomplish and still feel very accomplished with that refactoring that I started 3 months ago.
Mhm.
So I'm in the last steps of end-to-end typing, where got TypeScript in the front end, TypeScript in the back end, all the way to the database. And then what I'm trying to get right now is the request layer, where the, the like API call definitions are typed to the exact same, like from the definitions that the API itself uses to define the, route handlers. So technically you kind of have like typing, you have the potential for full, stack end-to-end typing all the way through. So I'm excited about that because I don't know, 3 months ago, this was completely a JavaScript project, which, as I mentioned, in hindsight, seems like it was an oversight not to adopt TypeScript. But in 2017, TypeScript wasn't quite as hot as an item. But yeah, so I'm excited to have all in place. It's the project is now greater than 50% TypeScript. So yeah, as I've been going through, trying to sort of what's the word, selectively or strategically migrate. I've migrated a fair amount of code.
That's good.
Yeah, excited about that. They hope now, and then this is, it's kind of like always that danger with people who love doing technical stuff, is that
Right.
the intention here was not to just play and have a good, better toy, but the intention was, okay, now when I add new features, I will do so with greater assurance that I'm not breaking other things, that all matches up. So my intention, I also just returned to work a week ago, which is going all right. Got some new responsibilities that keep me busy, but I'm hoping in the next 2 months that I can add some of these features that I've been interested in, like appearances. Because right now with Howju, you can submit a quote that supports an argument or supports like a proposition. It's like, okay, I think this kind of proves that. But what I find myself frequently wanting to do while I read is not so much say that this proves that, but to capture, this is what I think this person's saying here. And that kind of opens up the social fact checking angle, because I don't always necessarily want to use what they're saying to prove something, because maybe I don't agree with them, or maybe it doesn't prove anything in particular interest, or I just don't know what it may be, how it may relate to, proving or disproving things. But I do think they're saying something that I kind of want to paraphrase, into a format that's like our standalone claim we've discussed. And then maybe, given separate time, I would start looking at, okay, is it true? Is it not true? What other sources or, what other arguments weigh in on that proposition? Or that's why I've been calling them propositions, but claim or standalone claim.
Yeah. Let me, if you want, I can tell you what I've been working on.
Yeah.
But let me take 1 minute to step away. Be right
Sure.
back.
down with Brett Weinstein. Hey.
Sorry about that.
Q Park project. I had a chance to sit down with Brett Weinstein.
Hey,
Brett's
Carl.
been a long time
Are you back?
behind the scenes support.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, let me move. I should move the call to the screen so I can see both. Hey,
Yeah. Hey. Yeah, so my update, first of all, on Monday's gonna be the first meeting, I guess technically second meeting of the Sense Doing project, which I think I'm gonna try and rename to the Sense Doing Lab. I don't know. So just to kind of give an overview of that, it's just a group of people getting together to practice with sense making tools and processes by taking an actual topic and working through it as a group for a couple meetings and then switching topics and switching tools.
Mhm.
So we're doing what would a healthy society do during a pandemic regarding masks
Mhm.
in the next pandemic. As a way to explore it. Then I'm hoping that will produce data of claims and arguments that we can use, and I can use in Reasonpedia and Reason Score, and then that we can also like have documented so other people in their debate tools can use that as a model debate,
Yeah, that'd be
along with the
cool.
videos if they want to see how the discussion evolved.
Mhm.
Of course, it's bigger than just the debate portion, right? It's also kind of like problem. It's solution, finding solutions and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that isn't related to actual argument maps, but and then the other thing I'm working on is I'm still thinking about doing a video, like doing content marketing for Reasonpedia/Reason Score and having it to where I'm reviewing a fact check or discussing a debate and scoring it live and having the score on the screen and have it adjusting as I do it, just so people can see how it works. Because I think explaining how it works isn't as useful as just seeing the
Mhm.
numbers change and everything. But I don't know if I'll have time for that because I'm spending a lot of time taking care of my mom and making a living. And B, I don't know if it'll really be useful. I was gonna so I wrote up a script for do a debate on, I can't remember the topic now. It was reviewing a fact check, and I don't know, it's kind of boring. I don't know if I'm actually gonna record the video. I got some good feedback that was useful. And then, but now I'm thinking about doing one. I don't think a lot of people be interested in, but something I'm interested in is about saturated fat. So the same guy had a 1 hour discussion with with another guy about something that was published in the cardiologist, it's saturated fat and heart disease. And it was the cardiologist in the EU, a journal in the EU, and they also referenced a similar study that was released in a journal in the US, in a prestigious journal, and they're saying that both of those are wrong, which is interesting because they're very science-based guys, and they're like, well, these things, journals publish these all the time. But I started realizing when I was thinking about that is that they're actually arguing past each other, because the study is saying that saturated fat the dangers of it is overblown.
Mhm.
And they're saying saturated fat is an important thing to take into account in the standard diet. Both those things can be true. They're not directly in conflict. So they're arguing and they're pointing out flaws in their methodology and stuff like that. But the flaws in their methodology is you're saying they're flaws because you're asking a different question than what they were asking.
Right.
So then I don't know if when I step through all that, I think it'd be interesting, but it may not be scoreable unless I just could have two scores going at the same time and saying, here's the good and bad points of this one metric and this other one, and then compare them and say, you know, they're both true to some extent, and they're both vague. Like saying that something's been overblown, that's not a helpful distinction. That's not a solvable question. There's no definition of overblown. And to
Yeah.
say it has been, just if one person has ever misspoken about it, is that useful?
Right.
To say that it has been, it's like, no, you need to say something a majority of people have overstated. You know, it's not a statement. It's not, at no time do they make a claim that is of any value. So now I'm like, well, is it worth, I mean, it's interesting to have the discussion to explore how people can do a study and do an hour-long podcast with research and still come out by just polluting the information space.
Mhm.
So that'd be an interesting discussion. But it also means that I would be putting in about 20 hours of research and thought just to produce a 20-minute video.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe the bang for the buck on that one may not work out, because if the fundamental issues they're talking about different claims, there's not really a controversy or an interesting thing there. So only if you discovered sort of, sometimes you dig down and there's that sort of surprising, twist, like, oh, saturated fat's actually good for you. I mean, that would be the twist. And then, then you dig deeper and it's like, oh, but only in these circumstances, or only for people who, are missing this in their diet or whatever. Like if you found those, that would be interesting. I always find those exciting to find. And that's why I'd like to surface in a tool like Howju, is these sort of interesting counter arguments or unexpected, reasons to think, differently. But
yeah,
if
and
aren't those,
the stories do have those kind of twists and turns. And
Yeah.
I think people might find it interesting. Yeah, like in stories where you're like, okay, here's a study from a journal and here's what they're saying. And the journal statement claim is kind of anti-science. I don't know if that's the way to say it, but it's kind of surprising. And then the other group talking about how they did their analysis wrong is kind of surprising. And then you have the final surprise that says, and they're both right, even though they're calling each other wrong. So there might be a way to do it to where it's entertaining to watch,
Mhm.
even though the end's a big nothing ball. I don't know. That's one of the things I need to work about. Is it worth spending my time doing all this? But every time I look at a topic, it all ends up being the same, because I'm really starting to believe that what Marc Antoine's working on is almost more important, because the majority of disagreements are misunderstandings, not facts being wrong. I mean, there are also wrong facts mixed in there. But it's kind of like if people actually define the top claim and agree on it, I don't know. It seems like you have to kind of do that first. And if we're not to that, then, but you'll never get people to do that in the wild. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I hope that we could. It doesn't. One thing interested me about that 6-minute clip was Brett was sort of referencing some of the values of a system like QPark, the asynchronous nature, because I think that's really critical. And it's what's the word? Not gratifying, but anyway, it feels good to see someone else sort of seeing this issue that you need. Because I'm this way. Like I want to spend time to look through a problem on a research, and I need an asynchronous approach to seeing what's there. And I'm doing it right now. Like it's coming up with, even words on the spot can be challenging. Whereas, really considered rational responses takes time, and sometimes different perspectives. Like you may need multiple viewpoints to have looked at something over time to really feel confident that the full picture is there. So on the one hand, yes, like in real time, which is what you said, like two people face to face or on video, yeah, they may not feel comfortable agreeing to a proposition or a claim that they're going to both be like, okay, this is the one we disagree on. Because as soon as you make a stance, you're vulnerable, which in real time can be uncomfortable. But given more time, like, okay, I'm going to look at this, then I'm going to go for a walk, and come back and look at it. And if I still think that this claim is like a pretty good one, then okay, I'll feel comfortable agreeing to it. Maybe in an asynchronous space, people would be more likely to agree to a claim. But I also think there needs to be the possibility to update the claim later, because maybe both parties agree this is the claim. Call them parties as if it's like a lawsuit, but it's not. Maybe, but two people with differing opinions could agree on a claim, or a group of people could agree. And then deep down in the, maybe not super deep, but a few steps down the argument tree, they realize, oh wait, this counter argument like makes this claim kind of irrelevant. But all of us recognize that that's not really the issue. It's a straw man, defeatment or defeasement or whatever the right word be, straw man defeat. So, okay, what we really need to do is, buffer this up a little bit and be like, okay, we're really only talking in this context, or, with this qualifier, this definition. So, and a system, I think, needs to be flexible enough to move the conversation, or to allow that sort of shift.
Yeah, and it's funny because people call that changing the goalposts, but it's not really. It's really clarifying the goalposts. Like the two people were aiming at different goalposts. Let's choose a shared one.
Right.
It's clarifying it. Yeah, so in a system, but when I was talking about in the wild, I was saying outside of a system.
Right. Yeah.
And so people's brains don't, the human brain doesn't work that way. So we could eventually train people, but anytime someone sees something they argue with, they're coming 9 times out of 10, they're in their mind are imagining the person making a different claim, because rarely do they actually say what their claim is.
Right.
I was like reading through one of the papers, and I finally found a sentence that kind of says what their overall claim is, because the title is not specific enough. Yeah. So people don't even make claims. So part of the claim creation and revision process, and some of that is not something some of that is something you can't actually build into the system. It's more like a skill that you hope people would learn by using the system, but you can't really make I don't know, you might be able to make an AI that evaluates how detailed the claim is, but
well, in real life, it would be a referee, I think. It'd be like that independent third party sort of watching, me like, okay, it looks to me like you two are sort of dancing around the issue and not quite on the same point. Could both of you try and, state the claim or the point you really like to debate with the other, and let's see if they match up. And if not, maybe let's start with that discussion.
Yeah. And for my content videos, though, I don't, I've tried in the past to get people to be willing to be the only people willing to debate are people that enjoy using rhetoric and manipulation and grandstanding. And no one else is willing to do a debate. I'm exaggerating. No one. It's spending so much time finding people that are willing to sit down and figure it out. That's kind of like, well, I don't have time to do that. So I have to work off of debates that are in the wild. And every time I do that, it's like, oh God, people couldn't make a rational argument to save their life. You put a gun to their head and you put a gun to their head and they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah. I think
even the highly rational scientific people that really care about it, it takes a lot of work.
It's interesting. Maybe I have to see that. But what I was saying is that having public debates that are recorded nowadays is a little scary. I mean, maybe it's always been scary. I mean, what do they talk about? Is it Chatham House rules, where a group of people will agree that everyone who's present in a private meeting can discuss the content of what was said, but they can't attribute it to any particular speaker. And I think those are somewhat old rules. So maybe it's always been kind of scary, but like a cancel culture and people sort of deciding to brigade or, jump on things. Like you can make a claim that even when you look at it yourself later, like, wow, if you look at what I just came out, the words that came out of my mouth, in a negative light, that does sound bad, but that's not what I meant when I said it. But here it's recorded for forever on YouTube, and now it's just been captured and passed around Twitter, and some people have capitalized on it, and now people are calling me bad names and finding out where I live, and that's scary, because if you have
Yeah,
well, even if you're just a person, it's scary, but if you have a family and children, like, you don't
yeah.
want
I think
involve them.
it's definitely scarier today than it has been, just because of social media and the availability and all of that. But also, I think the other reason is the average person doesn't want to spend that much time in system 2 thinking. It takes a lot of mental effort to do all this, and I just don't think they care
What is system
enough.
1 versus system 2?
So system 1 is intuition, system 2 is kind of rational thought.
Okay.
I forgot who coined those. There's another system 1, system 2, but that's the one I was referring to, was intuition versus, rational. And actually, I'm coining the phrase of a system 3, and that's where you're doing rational thinking with a tool. Because it's like, well, the funny thing is, like, people are like, well, where would you use a tool? It's like, do you ever use your bank's website to look at your account balance? That's system 3 thinking. You're not remembering everything you bought for the last month.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
This
that's a very easy analogy. I like it, or metaphor.
Yeah. Although it was funny because last week Tim was like, "Well, are you letting the system make the decision for you?" It's like, does your bank account tell you whether or not you could buy that Twinkie or not? No, but it gives you the information.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the two. It's kind of like, the scope of the bank account, its accuracy. It
Mhm.
can have wrong data. You go in and you correct the data, or you have a spreadsheet. It's like, well, yeah, the data is sometimes wrong, and when it is, I go in there and correct it, or I understand that it's wrong to a certain amount. Like, it doesn't count the money in my couch or in my pocket, so I know it's not 100% reality, but it's useful. It's still useful to not have to do the calculations in my head, and at
Right.
least to have it written down somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, it's just so funny how many people push back on wanting to do things rationally. Although that's another set of videos, is talking about emotions and intuition and rationality, because really you can't have rationality or system 2 or system 3 thinking without system 1. Like, what are you going to work on? Well, that's an intuitive decision. And
Mhm.
then, you're putting stuff into your spreadsheet. You still have to think back, well, what else belongs in the spreadsheet? Oh yeah, I remember that. Well, that's an intuitive system 1 thing. Oh, I forgot that time I went to the store and I bought this other thing. That's not a rational. And then, like, people think of it like Spock, or Spock doesn't have emotions. And I'm like, no, emotions are important. If I don't put in my spreadsheet that these people are going to be pissed off with this decision, if I'm not taking that into account, I'm not being rational. It's irrational to not take emotions into account.
Right.
And so that might be an interesting video.
When you mentioned Spock, if I recall correctly, Vulcans are incredibly emotional. They're actually more emotional than humans as far as their experience, but they have, because of that, perhaps they've learned this system, and the meditation and the practice to control and maintain that emotion.
Yeah, that's true. And they're a bit fictional. If you look at the real world equivalent of Stoics, it's funny because people think of the Stoics not having emotions, but actually they have great amounts of joy and great amounts of love. What they don't have is they're not, and they have anger, but they are not controlled by it. And the part of the Stoic tradition is even, like, memento mori is thinking about death, right? And thinking about all those things so that you're released from the overwhelming emotions. But the
Mhm.
emotions are still an important part of the whole situation. So yeah, so kind of correcting those misperceptions would be interesting, but trying to, you'd have to figure out a way to do that in an interesting video. And titling the video something like, I don't know if people would even find this interesting, but emotions versus logic. And then the upshot is that it's not a versus thing. They both are very important to the process.
Mhm.
But those are some of the things I'm kind of toying about is just starting to make some content regarding this whole thing and trying to use reason score in there somewhere. Might be
Sounds
interesting,
fun.
but I don't really have time.
What are you working? You said you're working on like professional stuff. What are you working on there?
Well, so me and one other guy, he owns a company called Refractive, and we help companies. Right now, majority of what we're doing is the tagline is think visually, work brilliantly. So we're taking like data out of Airtable and visualizing it in Miro, which is a whiteboard tool, and then pulling data back into Airtable and doing analysis on both sides. So we build Miro plugins for whiteboarding, and then we build Airtable plugins for backend stuff and communication in between. It's
Cool.
mostly what we're doing right now. Of course, we'll use other technologies as they come up, but those are the two hot ones right now. So we have a Fortune 100 company that we're doing a lot of work for, and then we're building our own plugin for Miro called Power Pack, which just gives you a whole bunch of stuff. Like we have a Lorem Ipsum tool, and you can highlight a whole bunch of stickies and tell it put 4 words in every sticky from Lorem Ipsum, and it would do that if you're mocking out a tool or something. So it's just a whole bunch of little tools. Take
Sounds
everything,
fun.
put it in a circle, aim it towards the center or aim it towards another thing, so you can quickly
Huh.
do visual thinking tools.
So like
A lot of fun.
data driven whiteboarding, like
Yeah.
visualization. Oh, that sounds interesting. It's very meta.
Mhm.
It's cool. You have a
Yeah.
video yet, like any sort of demo video, kind of to see what?
No, if you go to refractivestrategy.com, you'll see the website with some of our tools. We need to so and that goes to visualthinking.tools. We need to make some more up-to-date videos. None of them are good enough to really share.
Cool.
I guess there's a few kind of diagrams in there, but yeah, we need to make some videos. But right now, most of our time is spent supporting these Fortune 100 companies. So
Mhm.
we're about to get the pro version of Power Pack out, so people will be able to pay for the advanced features.
Okay, but here's
yeah,
like
we need to show.
here's one example. I can see it's got the stickies, and then it connects them and groups them or clusters them. I kind of get the idea of the sort of thing you're doing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Very cool. That's
Yeah.
it'd be very lucrative if Miro picks up on it or something.
Well, that's funny. They actually they have their own, since we came out with this, they made their own tool called Clusterizer, which does probably
Okay.
half of what our tool does. And they just kind of took the name. It was funny when they announced it, some of their people, because they're a fairly good sized company, some of their people used our logo and icon instead of theirs. And I still think some people, were talking to someone in Miro the other day, and she said, oh, and so Clusterizer was originally built in the client side app, which we have access to. And then they put it internal into the system. And I'm like, no, I think you're thinking about our tool. I don't think she realized we wrote that. But what they did is a little bit different, but uses the exact same name. So so when they announced it, some of the people in the day of the videos were pointing to our app instead of theirs. It was funny. So they're, and like our Power Pack, it's just a whole list of tools. We know that they're gonna slowly they're gonna build some of that stuff into the platform directly.
Right.
So we know that that's gonna happen, but we work with them where, there's just today we were on a call talking about some new UI features that they want to put in, and we're giving them
With
feedback
Miro?
on apps. Miro.com.
We're in
Yeah,
these
we were.
conversations. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I guess I don't know much about those types of relationships, but I mean, it seems like it's weird that they use the same name and we're using your logo for a while.
Well, yeah, it was just an accident. They they told all their staff, hey, we're building this thing called Clusterizer, and so some of their people went into the store to find Clusterizer because they needed to put it on a PowerPoint
Oh,
before
I
this
see.
video conference, and they
Yeah.
just grabbed ours because theirs wasn't released yet at the time, and they didn't
got you.
realize that there was a competitor, even though they were aware of it, and we have a rep there, and that rep knew what we were doing, and our tool kind of did inspire what they did, but there was just a miscommunication within their organization on that there's another app and that's not us, and so it was just an accident. They came back and said, sorry, we didn't mean to cause confusion, but it's fine.
I don't know.
It's
Yeah, I
fine.
guess if it's working, it's working like business wise, but it is always frustrating when there's smaller, organizations that are sort of doing the product exploration and discovering what's used, because product development is complicated and expensive. So if they can basically outsource that to people and then like pick and choose what's useful. I mean, Amazon does this with their data. They allow third-party vendors, to like sell stuff, and then they actually look at the data and they say, what here is very lucrative to sell? And then they start selling it as an Amazon Basics item. Yeah. I don't know if there's a way around it.
Yeah, you have to be careful. I mean, so we're building stuff on top of someone else's system, which is always a risk.
Right.
So you have to understand what that risk is and what you're doing, and have an exit plan, and or at least be okay with losing everything.
Right.
But a lot of what we're doing, we're taking it to an nth degree that they would never do. Like that lorem ipsum tool, they might make one that puts in some lorem ipsum text, but not like ours where it'll spread it among all the items you have selected and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
think we're always going to have a batch of stuff that they're not going to want to go all the way.
Right.
Plus, they're talking about right now about giving us deeper integration into the app and making sure they're not duplicating work as much.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That sounds like
Hey,
a good
Mark
relationship.
Antoine.
Sorry, I got the hour wrong. I thought it was at 4 for some reason.
Oh,
Apologies.
yeah, that happens from time to time. Oh,
Still,
I'm getting a delivery.
still have to get used to the new schedule. So
we weren't talking about anything important, and even at the end of it, I was just talking about my other business that's not related to how I make money to earn time to play around with all the stuff that we're doing. Although I was admitting to Carl that what you're working on is, I'm finding, is more and more important. Disambiguation.
yeah, I'm getting new intuitions also. Disambiguation, I think, is absolutely fundamental, and it's still convinced of it. I think I've been working a lot on the idea of composition these days. I often speak of all these layers, right? Causal layer, epistemic layer, and so on. And what I'm realizing is what's important is to identify units of thoughts that can be composed. Like when you have causal layer, like you say, this may cause that, then you compose them into a Bayesian causal tree or a causal graph. When you have distinctions and definitions and ontology pieces, you compose them into a concept lattice using formal concept analysis. In a way, science is the composition of bits of evidence into an epistemic layer. Why do we believe this or that? There are these things that exist that are composable. You can take those pieces and put them together according to a certain pattern, a composition rule, if you will. And what I'm thinking about is all the layers must be translatable into units that can be composed. I mean, our argumentation graphs are also an epistemic layer, if you will. And it's if we want something that scales beyond one-to-one conversation and alignment, we need to be able to make those compositions possible on the one hand, but I think that there's a point where each layer influences the other, right? If you're saying this may cause that, and then what is that? Well, this is at the distinction formal concept lattice layer that you decompose it. So the substance of what's in the Bayesian tree is influenced by the concept lattice. So there's between layer interaction also. But yeah, I'm really trying to think about what are the pieces that compose well. And that's my current brain brain work. But the distinctions, I'm more and more confident that the units are pretty clear. I still think that distinction is a unit in and of itself. But I'm kind of working on, the other thing I think that's important is to be able to look at any node in one of those layers and look at it from the other layer's perspective. So that's what I'm on these days.
What is distinction?
A distinction is when you say, I have a concept and I realize, oh, do you mean this or that?
Okay.
And it could be, and sometimes, I mean, often the distinction, you'll say, well, it could be this, it could be that, or it could be either, right? And the either represents the common abstraction. And until you've asked a question, what you have is a naive concept because you haven't thought about the distinction yet.
Mhm.
So the abstraction is not the same as the naive concept. It's deciding to abstract the distinction.
Right.
So whenever you have any concept that's implicated in, say, a claim, the concept evolves as new distinctions get introduced. And when the concept evolves, because new distinctions are introduced, you'll want to revisit the claims you've made about the concept. Now, most people have a clear idea or clear enough idea, which means that they'll be able to bulk replace, say, oh, I meant this one, or I meant both, the common abstraction. But at the social level, it's when you realize that a lot of people who you thought were saying the same thing weren't. But individually, we'll often be able to say, I usually meant this one. Oh, except maybe in that case where I actually meant this one. And I didn't realize that the distinction was there. It wasn't clear in my head. But there's going to be a bulk operation in most individual statement streams. In the collective statement streams is where it gets interesting, and you realize, well, we weren't saying the same thing. And I speak about concepts like, you know, what claims are about, like more entity types or abstractions of entities, you know, but it's true of claims themselves. Claims have definitions, distinctions, and so on. It's true at higher levels. But ideally, when there's a distinction in a claim, we'll want to bring it down to a distinction in the component entities. Predicate, of course. So that's what I'm working on.
Cool.
What it means is that ideally we should have a kind of ephemeral concept broker, so that we can say, you know, I'm working on these concepts and that's my identifier for them. And you try to find equivalent concepts elsewhere, and you use the phrase as the concept identity tentatively, and then you realize, well, but there's this distinction that have been applied. Oh, actually, I mean this one. And then, okay, temporarily, there's this tentative definition that you're using for this concept. or maybe you don't bother to define because, oh, everybody knows that. And then distinctions get added in the public discourse, and you realize, okay, my concept, which was tied to this identity and the broker, well, that identity has forked with new distinction. And you want to be able to query the broker and say, okay, what's happened to that concept so that I can adjust my personal. So building that broker is now a primary goal for me.
Mhm.
So, and that broker is just part of what you were talking about before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the ontology layer, if you will, as opposed to the causal layer, as opposed to this and that and the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I do still would like to make a website, and I have term.fyi where you can directly link to a single definition. You go Paris/1 or Paris/2 to say which Paris you're referring to.
I think this is totally part of what I'm trying to do, but what I'm trying to do is to say, hey, by the way, Paris/1, you know what? They revised the boundaries, and so this statement you make about the population is only applies to the boundaries pre this date, and don't apply to the boundaries post this date. And
yeah, there will be a time where it's like, oh, that /1, we actually, like we just said Paris the city as opposed to Paris, or Paris, Texas, rather than Paris, France. But now we're like, oh, but when you say Paris, do you mean literally Paris, or Paris, the metropolitan area, or do you
metropolitan area, yeah, or the
Right.
boundaries of before this revision of the boundaries, or after this revision of
Oh,
the
that's
boundaries?
right. Or like 1,000 years, or a couple hundred years ago when it was much smaller.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how you go about doing that.
And even when we revise a definition, right? Like take now we say climate change rather than global warming. It's the same concept, but we changed the name because our idea of what it implies is different, and we emphasize less the warming and more the variability, the extreme variability.
I heard the other day from a rather good source that the term climate change was coined by someone who opposes climate change. It was actually done as a way to straw man it.
Interesting. Interesting.
It was fascinating to hear, and why that kind of breaks down. I still think global warming's a bad term.
I still think it's also a good term, but it's a matter of emphasis.
Right.
It's a matter of emphasis. A lot of people hyphenate almost, right? Global change, climate warming, blah, 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 because it's both. The climate is changing. It's getting higher variability. It's changing faster. And globally, it's a warming, though locally, maybe not.
So yeah, someone was testing the two terms, and climate change actually seems to, for most people, intuitively make them feel less concerned that's an epistemic risk.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But I don't have a source. I can't.
I assume.
Yeah, right. So it's having the opposite effect of what we think, what I thought it would do. Of course, once again, I can't remember the source.
I don't know if I would have tried to predict the impact of the name change. The positive thing is emphasizing the delta. The negative thing is, you're right. I mean, it's the positive thing I see is when people just say, how can it be global warming? We just had snow in Texas, right? It's like,
right. Yeah.
FO. Global warming doesn't mean local warming everywhere.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
change of-
we had several years that were very, very mild. Oh, winters and mild summers. It was really nice. And we're like, oh wow, might be global warming might be good for us.
Our winters
Except the
are
insects don't die if it doesn't get cold enough, and so our mosquitoes are even bigger. So there's
Yep.
pros and cons everywhere, right?
Yep. Our winters are certainly milder than they were, but then today it's dropping to -45 with wind chill.
Oh wow,
Celsius.
we're just coming out of a 3-day freeze. It's finally thawing, and we had bad ice because in the middle of the day it gets just above freezing, everything melts, but it doesn't evaporate, and then you have a slick ice
Oh, lovely.
the next day. We don't get dry snow or anything.
No, we get
Anyway.
much more slush than we used to.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it's warmer, undoubtedly warmer. Anyway, so we are veering off the cliff.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say hello and apologize for not being there because I have cooking to do, which I thought I'd do.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I will be involved in the collaborathon probably.
The CTA.
The CTA.
Collaborathon?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I'm involved in something else, so it's a bit insane to do both, but I realize, you know what, there's a great let's do stuff energy in that space.
And when
What
you
is
say doing
CTA?
that, it's Collaborative Technology Alliance.
Is
So
that
it's a
from
meeting-
Collaborative.tech.
OG?
No, it's not OGME, it's another bunch.
Can I learn a little bit about it? How do I find it? Is it in Slack or something?
I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
Collaborative.
But-
That's a good.
If I remember well. Hope I'm right.
Yeah, Collaborative Tech. Yeah.
Thanks.
And they meet on Hilo a lot and a little bit. I
And,
mean,
and
there's some overlap with them and OG.
we're supposed to present projects by the 7th.
So are you with a group or doing your own thing or?
I'll probably propose working on some of this. The composition thing is something I'm thinking a lot of these days. No.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was trying to see whether it'd be worthwhile to try to join a group, but they're kind of assuming that in the application process that your groups are already set. But it's not a big deal. I really don't have time for it anyways. Yeah, I might still attend some of the meetings, and I got the list of the proposals so far. I was gonna read through them, but I haven't had a chance. And then I don't know, Marc Antoine, you've seen that I'm doing a since doing meeting on Monday.
Yeah, and because I'm involved in that,
Yeah,
I've been invited to that European project. I need to cut a lot
Yeah,
of stuff,
no,
and I
yeah,
decided
I don't think it'd
not
be
to-
worth your time, anyways.
I don't think I've decided it wasn't the best use of my time, which is a pity because seeing people struggle with it is always inspiring.
We'll be recording and posting everything, so you can always watch them at 2x sometime when you're cooking or something. you
That's
know
a
what I'm saying?
skill I haven't developed. I should. The listening at 2x because I keep complaining that I hate listening to recordings because it's too slow compared to reading. But yeah, I should get into.
Yeah, and
Yes,
start at
listening.
1.5 or whatever, and your brain adapts pretty quickly. It does take a few minutes for it to ramp up, but I
Mm.
find I don't even notice. And then I come on a live meeting like this, and everyone's talking so slow. It's like, come on, get it out, get out your point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and anyways, also we should have outputs, so it might be worthwhile just to like wait for us to have like, oh, this is our. And like I was explaining to Carl, it's also not really about the debate process. It's going to end up being more about the here's a problem space, what are the proposed solutions and how do you get to that, which is not, you know, we're going to have concept confusion and we're going to have arguments about facts, but it's not the core of the problem. And this group is probably going to be a lot of like-minded people badly trying to represent the opposite side of the argument. So, well, what can you do? It's hard to find someone that
It's-
really disagrees
but-
with you that's willing to sit in a meeting for a couple hours.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
I am going to try and get with Braver Angels and see if I can find a conservative involved in that group that might, just because
That,
OTM
yeah,
tends to
Braver
be
Angels
liberal-based.
is definitely a group I have huge respect for. I mean, they're doing the work.
Yeah, I keep missing their meetings, but they do actually have a lunch meeting in close to my house once a month.
Okay,
So
nice.
I'll probably try and go in person and see if we can.
Okay,
That might be a good place to find people willing to collaborate.
sorry for the flyby, gotta cook, and apologies for missing the core
Yeah,
of
no
power.
problem. But I guess we'll go ahead and shut down the call.
Ciao, ciao.
I don't know, Carl, if you have anything else you want to cover before we head out.
Not really. I'm just so heads down with that last few code changes.
Okay. Do we not have? I'm looking and seeing why CDL is not on my calendar next week. I'm probably looking at the wrong calendar. Next week it should be.
Yeah, I've got it on my calendar. Next week it's at 11:30 on Wednesday.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. You think you'll be able to make that one or
Probably not, because Wednesday
Wednesday's the hard
mornings-
one?
Yeah, like that's a regular work day, so meetings are
Okay.
ongoing.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I'll let you go, but thanks for popping on.
Yeah, great chatting with you.
All right, bye.
Bye.